when layers have been turned into three-dimensional layers, they're going to behave differently to two-dimensional layers in terms of their stacking order. And stacking order is related to which layer is on top of which layer, and that will have a visible result of which one we can see and which one is behind. So two-dimensional layers stack one on top of the other, so I've got green with red on top of it, and because red is on top, I'm looking at red and I can see green behind it. Now if I turn these into three-dimensional layers, then I can first of all view these orthogonally, and so now I can see my active camera, which is what I'm going to be rendering, and I can see the top view. So if, for example, I highlight red and pull that out in Z space, then nothing really happens. It's just bringing the layer towards me. But if I click and drag and send it back to a point where it's behind the green layer in Z space, you'll see that it now sits behind it visibly as well in the active camera. You'll also note that red is still on top of green in the layers, but green is now visibly on top of red. You can also see this when you rotate objects. So if I pull that back to just on front of the green layer again, so this is the red layer that I'm clicking and dragging, and if I get my rotate tool and rotate this around the y-axis, you'll see that it actually intersects with the green layer. So this is as if these shapes were all completely porous, and that by moving them around in 3D space they will actually behave as you would expect them to in 3D space. Now if you add a two-dimensional layer to the layer stack, so if I draw another shape here, I'll draw a yellow box and I'll drag that down to the bottom. Now because this is a two-dimensional shape, regardless of how far I push back my green rather, it's never going to go behind that yellow, because yellow isn't set up to interact in any way with these 3D shapes. So regardless of how far I push that back, I can push that back into infinity and it will never go behind the yellow box. So it's an important thing to note that you can't always use the layer order here as a kind of a reference point for where things are visibly in the 3D space. That 3D layers will interact in a very different way than two-dimensional layers.